The sky was pale and quiet over Mount Olympus, a gentle veil of clouds drifting in slow motion. Far below, in the kingdom of Thebes, whispers filled the halls of a royal palace. Semele, daughter of Cadmus and Harmonia, carried within her womb a child unlike any other. Her heart beat slowly as she walked through her garden, her hands resting on her belly. She could feel warmth there, as though a soft flame lived beneath her skin. She often thought of the visits she received at night. A man of striking beauty came to her chamber. His eyes shone with the light of the heavens, and his voice rolled through the air like calm thunder. She knew him as Zeus. The god of the sky had chosen her. From their union, a child grew, hidden beneath her mortal frame. The days passed gently. The palace was filled with the scents of spring blossoms and the quiet songs of birds. Semele would rest near her window, touching the vines that climbed up the stone walls. Sometimes she whispered to the child she carried. "You are strong," she murmured. "You are loved." But not everyone looked upon her with kindness. Hera, queen of the gods, heard whispers of Zeus's secret visits. Her heart was heavy with jealousy. She watched from Olympus, her thoughts circling like dark clouds. She decided she would not let this child be born in peace. One afternoon, when the air was heavy with the fragrance of roses, Hera descended to the mortal realm. She cloaked herself in the shape of an old woman, her eyes gentle, her voice soft. She found Semele resting in her chamber, her hair spread across her shoulders. "My dear," the woman said, "you carry a child. But do you know who the father truly is? Mortal men are skilled at disguise. Are you certain it is Zeus who comes to you?" Semele's breath trembled. She pressed her hand to her belly. "It is him," she answered. "I have seen his face, I have heard his voice. He is no mortal." The old woman leaned closer, a tone weaving doubt like a thread. "And yet, if he is Zeus, why does he not appear before you in his true glory? Why hide behind a gentle form? If he is the king of the gods, should he not show you his real self, the one crowned with lightning?" The words settled into Semele's heart like seeds of unease. That night, when Zeus returned to her, golden light filling her chamber, she looked at him with pleading eyes. "My lord," she said softly, "I wish to see you as you truly are. Not in disguise, not veiled, but as the god of thunder himself. Show me your full glory, so I may know the father of my child." Zeus's smile faded. His hand trembled as it reached for hers. "Semele," he whispered, "you do not know what you ask. No mortal may look upon me unshrouded. My power is too great. The fire of the sky burns even the strongest heart." But Semele, caught between trust and the seed of doubt left by Hera's words, pressed him. "Please, my lord, I must see you as you are. Swear to me you will grant this." Bound by oaths and by his love, Zeus at last agreed. He called upon his true form, the sky trembling, the room filling with fire and lightning. In a single moment, the soft chamber became a storm. The air burned, the walls shook. Semele saw him as he truly was, crowned in thunder, clothed in storm clouds. And then, with a cry, she fell. The fire consumed her mortal body, too fragile to withstand the glory of the god. Her hands reached once more to her belly, and then her voice was gone. Zeus's heart was pierced with grief. He swept through the smoke, his arms reaching for what remained. Among the flames, the child still stirred, alive, small, and fragile. With trembling care, he gathered the unborn child and placed him against his own thigh. There, with divine power, he sewed the child into himself, hiding him from Hera's wrath and sheltering him from the storm. Time passed. The child grew, not in the womb of a mortal woman, but within the god of the sky himself. Zeus carried him, protecting him as the days turned and the stars wheeled in their courses. And when the moment came, with a roar of thunder that broke across the heavens, the child was born a second time. This was Dionysus. The infant's cry was soft, almost like a note of music carried on the wind. His skin glowed with a gentle warmth, his eyes wide and curious. Zeus cradled him against his chest. For a moment, the storm stilled and the clouds parted, revealing a calm sky filled with silver stars. Zeus looked upon his son with quiet wonder. "You are twice born," he whispered. "From Semele and from me. You will carry both a mortal heart and an immortal spirit. Your path will not be simple, but it will be great. The baby's tiny fingers curled around Zeus's thumb, holding with surprising strength. And in that small grip, Zeus felt hope. But Hera, watching from afar, did not forget. She saw the child safe in Zeus's arms, and her heart stirred again with unease. She turned her eyes away, but in silence she plotted. For now, though, Dionysus rested peacefully, his breath slow, his body warm. Around him, the air was calm, filled with the faint perfume of olive trees and wildflowers. In his first sleep, the god of wine and joy dreamed gently, unaware of the journeys that awaited him. And so his story began. The night after Dionysus's second birth was still and gentle. The stars shone brightly across the heavens, their light scattered like grains of silver on dark velvet. Zeus held the child close, but his thoughts were heavy. He knew Hera's heart would not rest. She had already sought to destroy this child before he had even taken his first breath. If she discovered where he was kept, her wrath would fall again. Zeus turned his gaze from the mountains of Olympus to the valleys far below. He needed someone who could keep the child safe, hidden from Hera's eyes. Someone both loving and careful, able to raise the boy away from the schemes of the gods. He thought of Hermes, the quick-footed messenger, always clever and discreet. With a flicker of light, Zeus called him. The young god appeared swiftly, his winged sandals touching the earth in silence. "You summon me, father," Hermes said, his eyes falling to the infant wrapped in swaddling cloth. He tilted his head, curiosity flickering across his face. "This is the one she tried to destroy." Zeus nodded. "Dionysus, born twice. He is mine and Semele's. He must be kept safe. I cannot leave him here." Hera's eyes are sharp, and her anger will not fade. Hermes stepped closer. He looked down at the child, who slept peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The baby's lips moved softly, as though he were dreaming. Hermes's heart warmed. "He is small but strong. I will carry him wherever you ask." Zeus placed the child in Hermes's arms. "Take him to Ino, Semele's sister. She will shelter him, and her husband Athamas will raise him as their own. Hide him well, Hermes. Let Hera believe he has vanished, lost to the winds." Hermes bowed his head. "I will guard him." The messenger god spread his wings and rose into the air. The night wind carried him gently, his path quiet and swift. Below him, forests swayed, rivers shimmered in the moonlight, and the child slept through it all. Hermes cradled him close, whispering to him as they flew, "Sleep, little one. You are not forgotten. You are watched by the swift and the strong." At dawn, they reached the halls of Ino and Athamas. The queen welcomed Hermes, though surprise flickered in her eyes when she saw the child he carried. "This is my sister's son," she said softly, her fingers brushing the baby's cheek. The warmth of recognition stirred in her heart. Semele is gone, but her child lives. Hermes explained everything, and Ino agreed without hesitation. She wrapped Dionysus in soft linen, cradling him as though he were her own. "He will be safe here," she promised. "I will love him as I loved her." For a time, Dionysus lived in quiet peace within Ino's palace. The child grew, his laughter filling the halls, his small feet pattering across the stone floors. He was gentle and curious, his eyes always wandering toward the gardens where vines curled and flowers bloomed. Ino sang to him softly as she rocked him to sleep, and Athamas watched with pride as the boy took his first steps. But Hera's watchful gaze lingered still. She had not forgotten the child. From Olympus, she saw whispers of his presence in the house of Ino. Rage welled in her heart, sharp and bitter. She descended once more, her shadow stretching over the palace. This time she did not disguise herself as an old woman. Instead, she cloaked her anger in madness. She breathed it into the minds of Athamas and Ino, filling their thoughts with terror and confusion. Athamas' eyes grew wild, and Ino's heart raced with fear. Their calm home turned into a place of shadows and trembling voices. Sensing the danger, Zeus again acted swiftly. He called upon Hermes once more. "Take the child," Zeus commanded. "He cannot stay here. Hera has poisoned their minds. She will not stop until she finds him. Carry him far away, to the nymphs who dwell in the forests and the valleys. They will raise him in secret, beneath the shade of trees, where no one will think to look." Hermes obeyed. Once again, he lifted the boy into his arms. Dionysus, though still young, clung to him with small hands, his eyes wide and uncertain. The world had shifted again, and though he could not understand, he felt the unease that lingered in the air. Hermes flew across the land, past mountains and rivers, until they reached a quiet valley. Here, the land was green and soft. Streams trickled over smooth stones. Trees stretched tall, their branches heavy with leaves. In the center of the valley stood a grove tended by gentle nymphs, daughters of the earth and water. They came forward as Hermes descended, their steps light, their eyes filled with wonder. The scent of pine and wildflowers surrounded them. "This is Dionysus," Hermes said, "son of Zeus and Semele. Keep him safe. Guard him well. Let him grow among you, far from Hera's reach." The nymphs agreed. They wrapped the boy in fresh cloth woven of soft fibers. One brought honey to his lips, another sang a lullaby that drifted like wind through leaves. Dionysus smiled faintly, his small body relaxing as if he knew he had found shelter. And so the child lived among the nymphs. Days passed like gentle ripples across water. The boy grew quickly, his laughter mingling with the songs of birds. He wandered barefoot through the grass, splashing in streams, tugging at the vines that crept up the trees. The nymphs watched him closely, guiding his steps, teaching him the names of flowers, showing him how to listen to the hum of bees and the rush of water. At night, they lit small fires that glowed softly against the darkness. Dionysus would curl against their arms, listening to their quiet songs until sleep carried him away. His dreams were filled with gentle light, with the rustle of leaves and the scent of grapes ripening on unseen vines. Though young, he carried a presence within him that was different. The nymphs felt it when he laughed, when he touched the earth with his hands, when his eyes brightened at the sight of green growing things. They whispered to one another that he was destined for more than a simple life. But they did not say this to him. They let him remain a child, safe, loved, and hidden. Far above, on Olympus, Hera searched in vain. Her eyes combed the valleys, her heart restless. But the boy remained unseen, cradled by the earth itself, guarded by those who loved him. In those years of peace, Dionysus's spirit grew strong and curious. He touched the vines often, his small hands reaching for their twisting shapes. Sometimes he thought he could feel a pulse in them, as though they answered to his touch. The nymphs watched quietly, wondering what power would awaken in him as he grew older. For now, though the boy was still young, his days simple and calm. He wandered the valley with wonder in his eyes, unaware of the long path ahead, a path filled with discovery, with journeys across seas and mountains, and with the gift that would one day define him. The world waited patiently, holding its breath as the child of Zeus and Semele learned to walk in the quiet grove. The seasons turned gently in the hidden valley. Spring flowed into summer, summer into autumn, and each year, Dionysus grew taller, his steps firmer, his eyes brighter. The nymphs who raised him watched with quiet joy as the boy transformed from an infant into a curious child, always wandering, always eager to touch the living world around him. The valley was his home, and it seemed to grow with him. The streams sang softly as he splashed in their cool waters. The trees swayed above him, their leaves whispering in the wind. Vines crept across stones, curling as though they sought the warmth of his hands. He moved through it all with wonder, never rushing, always pausing to listen, to look, to feel. In the mornings, the nymphs led him to the meadows. Dew sparkled on the grass, each drop catching the light of the rising sun. Dionysus bent close to study them, fascinated by how they shimmered like tiny jewels before slipping away into the warmth of the day. "Why do they vanish?" he asked once, his small voice carrying softly. "They are gifts of the night," a nymph replied, brushing her fingers over his dark hair. "The sun takes them back when morning grows strong. But they will return when night falls again." The boy nodded, his brow furrowing with thought. He accepted the answer but carried the question in his heart, as he often did with the mysteries of the world. By midday, he would wander the groves. The nymphs showed him how to weave garlands of flowers, their fingers guiding him as he tucked stems and petals together. He often placed the crowns upon his own head, smiling shyly as the nymphs clapped their hands in delight. Sometimes he set them gently on the trunks of trees, whispering, "For you," as if the trees themselves could hear. The nymphs noticed something unusual about him. Plants seemed to flourish in his presence. When he touched a vine, it grew faster, stretching toward him. When he lingered near fruit trees, their blossoms were fuller, their harvest sweeter. At first, the nymphs thought it was a chance. But as the years passed, they began to see the pattern. The boy carried a gift, one tied to the living earth. They spoke of it softly among themselves, careful not to burden him with words he could not yet understand. "He is touched by the power of his father," one said in a hushed tone, "but also by something gentler, something of his mother. He is both storm and soil, both sky and vine." At night, they gathered by the fire. The flames flickered softly, their glow reflected in Dionysus's wide eyes. He listened to the nymph songs, slow and soothing, filled with the rhythm of streams and the hush of leaves. Sometimes he fell asleep with his head in a nymph's lap, their voices carrying him into dreams. Other times he hummed along, his small voice weaving into theirs like a new note in an old melody. The nymphs taught him words of the earth. They showed him how to listen for the rustle of deer moving through the forest, how to tell the difference between the song of a lark and the call of an owl. He learned to recognize the smell of rain before it touched the ground, the cool shift in the air that whispered of a storm's approach. But more than anything, Dionysus loved the vines. They grew across rocks, up trees, through the meadows. Their twisting, climbing shapes fascinated him. Sometimes, when he sat in the grass, he held their tendrils in his hands, and they seemed to curl toward him as if seeking his touch. "Why do they follow me?" he asked once, his eyes full of quiet wonder. "They know you," a nymph answered gently. "You are part of them, and they are part of you." The boy tilted his head. He did not fully understand, but he felt a closeness he could not explain. When he was lonely, the vines seemed to wrap nearer. When he laughed, they seemed to grow greener. Their presence comforted him, like silent companions who never left his side. Years passed slowly. The boy's hair grew dark and wavy, his limbs long and graceful. He began to run through the valley with quick strides, chasing deer or climbing trees. The nymphs laughed as they tried to keep up with him, but their laughter was gentle, never sharp. Their love for him was endless, and he returned it with a smile that warmed their hearts. One evening, as the sun set in a wash of gold, Dionysus sat near a cluster of grapevines that grew wild along the edge of the meadow. He traced their leaves with his fingers, studying the clusters of fruit that hung heavy and sweet. He plucked one grape and held it to the light, watching how it glowed like a drop of amber. He placed it on his tongue and let the flavor burst gently. It was rich and sweet, unlike anything else. He closed his eyes, savoring it slowly. "This is different," he whispered. "This is more than food." The nymph beside him smiled softly. "It carries the sun, the soil, the rain. It carries life itself. You will come to know it better as you grow." Dionysus turned the thought over in his mind. He felt a strange pull toward the fruit, a curiosity that reached beyond its taste. He did not yet know why, but it stirred something deep inside him. That night, as he slept, he dreamed of vines stretching endlessly, their leaves glowing, their grapes heavy with promise. The dream was calm, not frightening, but filled with wonder. He woke at dawn with the image still bright in his mind. The days continued, each one a quiet lesson. Dionysus learned patience from the trees, gentleness from the streams, joy from the flowers that bloomed around him. His life was simple, sheltered, and peaceful. Yet within him, something grew, a seed waiting for the right time to awaken. The nymphs sensed it too. They watched with tender care, knowing that the child they loved so dearly was destined for a path far greater than their hidden valley. But for now, they kept him close, letting him remain a child of the earth, safe beneath the shade of the trees. Above, on Olympus, the gods looked down at times, curious. Some saw him only as a child, quiet and small. Others felt a faint tremor of recognition, as though his name would one day matter greatly. Hera, still restless, searched for signs, though for now, they slipped through her grasp like water. And so Dionysus continued to grow. The valley embraced him, the nymphs guided him, and the vines whispered softly around his steps. His story was still only beginning, though he did not yet know. The days of hidden childhood were fading, and soon the boy would take his first steps toward the wider world beyond the grove. The valley lay quiet beneath the warmth of summer. The air was filled with the gentle hum of bees and the soft rustle of leaves. Dionysus, now no longer a small child, wandered barefoot through the meadows. His hair had grown dark and curling, his face bright with the glow of youth. He carried in his hands a bundle of wildflowers, gathered with care as he walked. The nymphs watched him from a distance, their eyes warm with affection. They saw how the earth seemed to stir wherever he passed. Grass grew greener, flowers lifted their heads, and vines curled more quickly up the trees. It was as though the land itself recognized him, welcoming him with quiet joy. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with soft shades of rose and gold, Dionysus sat near a small stream. He dipped his feet into the cool water, watching the ripples spread outward. He tossed a flower petal onto the surface, smiling as it drifted slowly away. One of the nymphs came to sit beside him. She carried a clay cup, filled with fresh water from the spring. She held it out to him, but as he reached for it, something strange occurred. The water shimmered, and its clear surface darkened to a deep red. Dionysus paused, his hand hovering above the cup. The nymph gasped softly, her eyes wide. "What is this?" Dionysus whispered. He lifted the cup to his lips and tasted. The flavor was rich and sweet, unlike water, unlike fruit. It warmed him from within, carrying the essence of the grapes he loved so much. The nymph leaned closer. "This is no ordinary drink. This is new, born from your touch." Dionysus lowered the cup slowly, his brow furrowed in thought. "It came from me?" "Yes," she said gently. "It is your gift. The vines answer you, and now their fruit flows even into water. This is the beginning of your power." The boy looked back at the stream. The vines nearby seemed to sway toward him, their leaves rustling in the soft breeze. He felt a quiet connection, as though the earth itself had reached out to greet him. The nymph placed her hand on his shoulder. "Do not fear it. Power comes when it is ready. You have been chosen for this. It will grow with you, and you will learn its ways." Dionysus nodded slowly, though his heart was restless. He did not yet understand why such a gift had come to him. He only knew it was real, and that it would not leave him. The next day, the nymphs tested his gift gently. They brought him bowls of water, and with each touch, the liquid changed, glowing with a deep red hue. They tasted it and found it sweet, a drink unlike any other. They laughed softly, amazed, though they kept their joy calm so as not to startle him. Dionysus, too, felt wonder. He touched vines and watched them thicken. He brushed the leaves of a tree, and new buds bloomed even out of season. He did not push these powers, but when they came gently, without struggle, like water flowing naturally downhill. Sometimes, at night, he dreamed of great fields covered in vines, stretching farther than the eye could see. He dreamed of people he did not yet know, their faces bright with laughter as they raised cups filled with the same red drink he had made. He woke with the taste of grapes on his tongue, though no fruit had touched his lips. The nymphs whispered among themselves. They knew his gift was no small thing. It was tied to joy, to growth, to life itself. But they also knew it might draw Hera's eyes once more. And so they watched carefully, guiding him with patience, teaching him not to flaunt his power, but to let it grow quietly. One late summer evening, as the air cooled and the stars began to appear, Dionysus sat among the vines. He plucked a cluster of grapes and crushed them gently between his hands. The juice trickled down his fingers, staining them purple. He licked the sweetness from his skin and smiled. The nymph who sat nearby asked softly, "What do you feel when you do this?" He thought for a long moment before answering. "I feel as though I am not alone. The vines are alive. They speak without words. When I touch them, they answer." The nymph nodded. "They are part of you, and you are part of them." Dionysus leaned back in the grass, gazing at the sky. The stars shone like tiny fires, steady and distant. He wondered if the gods above watched him now, if they knew what stirred within him. He wondered if Hera's eyes still searched for him. But at that moment, he felt safe. The valley cradled him, the nymphs loved him, and the earth itself seemed to sing quietly at his side. As the seasons turned again, his powers deepened. He could call vines to grow where none had been. He could turn plain water into sweet wine with only a thought. He learned that when others drank it, their hearts lifted, their spirits lightened, as though joy itself had entered them. The nymphs rejoiced, but always with calm voices, never with clamor. They knew the boy must not draw too much notice. Yet power, once awakened, does not stay hidden forever. The world beyond the valley would one day hear the boy who could summon vines and pour joy into cups. The gods themselves would not ignore him for long. For now, though, Dionysus remained in his quiet grove. He walked beneath the trees, his hands brushing the leaves, his heart full of wonder. He did not yet know the weight of his gift. He only knew its beauty. The hidden valley slept under a silver moon. Dionysus lay among soft blankets, his breathing slow, his dreams light. Around him, the nymphs kept watch, their soft songs rising like threads of wind through the trees. The earth itself seemed to shield him, the vines curling protectively near his resting place. But far above, on Olympus, Hera stirred. The queen of the gods had long tried to turn her eyes from the child. She had thought him gone, hidden too far for her wrath to reach. Yet unease clung to her heart, quiet but steady, like the faint sound of water dripping in a cave. She could not ignore it. One night, as she walked the marble halls of Olympus, she paused before the edge of the sky. Below, she saw valleys and forests, rivers and seas. She narrowed her gaze, searching for signs. And though the boy was hidden well, Hera's instincts whispered to her. Somewhere he still lived. Zeus shelters him, she murmured, her voice low, her eyes cold. He hides the child as though I am blind. But no veil lasts forever. She turned her thoughts inward. Anger burned within her, but it was not sharp. It was slow, coiled, waiting. She did not strike at once. Instead, she sent her will drifting across the earth, touching shadows, searching for traces. Days passed, and whispers reached her ears. Mortals spoke of a strange valley where grapes ripened too quickly, where water turned sweet with a single touch. Such tales traveled slowly, carried from mouth to mouth, until even Olympus heard them. Hera listened, her heart tightening. She knew at once. It was not chance, not trickery. It was him. The child had grown, and his power had begun to bloom. Meanwhile, in the valley, Dionysus was unaware of her watch. He lived gently, each day unfolding like petals of a flower. He spent mornings wandering with the nymphs, afternoons resting in the meadows, evenings watching the stars. His powers came more easily now, flowing without effort. When he laughed, vines sprouted. When he touched water, wine spread like a soft glow. The nymphs noticed the changes and spoke to one another with both wonder and concern. His gift is beautiful, one whispered as she watched grapes swell heavy on the vine. Yes, another replied, but beauty draws eyes. We must be careful. Dionysus often heard their whispers, though he did not always understand their meaning. He only knew that the world felt alive in his hands, and it filled him with quiet joy. One evening, he sat by the stream. The water ran cool and clear, carrying the scents of moss and stone. He cupped his hands and brought the water to his lips. Without thinking, he wished it was sweeter, fuller, richer. The stream answered. Its flow deepened in color, spreading red through the current. The nymphs gasped, though softly. Dionysus blinked, startled, then smiled. He dipped his hands again and tasted. It was wine, smooth and sweet. The stream itself had changed at his desire. The nymphs exchanged uneasy glances. This is no small power, one said. The earth itself bends to him. From far above, Hera felt the stir. Her senses caught the shift, faint but clear, like a ripple spreading across still water. Her lips pressed into a thin line. It is true, she whispered. He thrives. She could not yet see the valley. Zeus's protection shielded it. The nymph's care wrapped it in silence. But the unease grew stronger each night. She walked the marble paths of Olympus with her heart restless. Even in her sleep, she dreamed of vines curling across the halls, of laughter echoing where it did not belong. Zeus, for his part, remained watchful. He too felt the stirrings. Though he did not always descend to the valley, his eyes often turned there. He saw his son among the nymphs, his laughter bright, his gift unfolding. Pride warmed him, though beneath it lingered worry. Hera's silence was not forgetfulness. It was waiting. One night, the nymphs gathered around Dionysus as the fire flickered low. The boy, now nearing the edge of youth, leaned against a log, his eyes reflecting the flames. One of the nymphs touched his shoulder. "Child," she said softly, "you must know something. Your gift is great, but not all hearts will greet it with joy. Some will fear it. Some will envy it. You must be careful." Dionysus looked at her, his brow furrowing. "Why would anyone fear what brings life and joy?" "Because not all see as you see," she replied gently. "What grows quickly may seem strange. What brings joy may seem dangerous to those who cannot control it. Even among the gods, hearts are not always kind." Dionysus thought for a long time, his gaze drifting to the vines curling at the edge of the firelight. He reached out and touched them, feeling their pulse beneath his fingers. He did not speak again that night, but the words settled in his heart like seeds. Above, Hera watched the same stars, her heart heavy with resolve. She would not yet strike, but she would not let the boy grow unchecked. His laughter carried too far. His vines spread too wide. The valley still sheltered him, the nymphs still loved him, and the earth itself still whispered to his hands. But shadows had begun to stir, slow and quiet. Hera's unease had awakened, and her eyes no longer turned away. The peace of the valley would not last forever. The valley that had sheltered Dionysus was wide and green, but as he grew older, it no longer felt endless. The boy who once chased butterflies among the flowers now stood at the edge of the hills, his gaze stretching to where the horizon shimmered. Curiosity pressed gently at his heart, like a breeze urging him forward. The nymphs, who had raised him as their own, saw this change. They gathered one evening beneath the great oak, their voices low, their eyes thoughtful. "He is no longer a child," said one, her hair catching the light of the setting sun. "The valley cannot hold him forever." Another nodded slowly. "His steps grow restless. He dreams of paths he has not walked. We cannot chain him here, even with love." Yet worry lingered among them. The world beyond was wide and uncertain. Still, they knew the time had come. When dawn broke the next day, soft and golden, Dionysus awoke to find the nymphs waiting. They stood together in a circle, their hands joined, their faces gentle but serious. One stepped forward, her voice warm as she spoke. "Child, you have been safe here, but safety is not the only teacher. The world beyond these hills holds wonders you must see, lessons you must learn. It is time you walk beyond the valley." Dionysus blinked, his heart beating faster. "Beyond? Where?" "To wherever your steps carry you," another answered. "The earth will guide you. Listen to it, and it will not fail you." He lowered his gaze, uncertain. "Will I be alone?" The first nymph reached to lift his chin. "You will never be alone. The earth will walk with you. The vines will follow your call. And we will still be here, waiting, whenever you return." Her words filled him with both courage and sadness. He did not want to leave, yet he could not deny the longing that had grown inside him. He nodded slowly. That morning, they prepared him for the journey. They wove a garland of ivy to rest on his head, its leaves cool against his hair. They gave him a staff cut from a young oak, smooth and strong, to steady his steps. Around his shoulders, they draped a cloak woven from soft wool, dyed deep with berries of the valley. "You will need nothing more," one whispered, "for what you truly carry is already within you." When the sun reached its height, Dionysus stepped beyond the border of the valley. The nymphs followed him only to the edge, their songs rising softly, blessing his path. He turned once to look back. They stood in the light, their figures framed by the green hills, their eyes shining with love. Then he faced forward and began to walk. The land beyond the valley unfolded like a scroll of endless stories. First came rolling meadows, filled with tall grasses that brushed against his hands. Bees drifted lazily from flower to flower, and skylarks sang high above. Dionysus walked barefoot, the soil cool beneath his steps, each blade of grass bending and rising again as if greeting him. At night, he rested beneath the open sky. The stars were vast and sharp, clearer than he had ever seen them within the valley's embrace. He lay on his cloak, listening to the soft rustle of the earth around him. Sometimes, as he drifted to sleep, he whispered to the ground, asking for comfort. The vines would curl near, wrapping gently around his staff, as if answering. Days stretched into weeks. He wandered through forests where tall pines reached for the sky, their scent sharp and clean. He followed rivers that glimmered in the sunlight, their waters singing softly over stones. Birds called in unfamiliar voices, and animals moved quietly through the shadows. Everywhere he went, Dionysus felt a strange closeness, as though the world itself recognized him. When he touched the bark of a tree, it pulsed faintly under his hand. When he cupped water in his palms, it seemed sweeter. He did not command it, he only listened, and it responded. Once, he came upon a field where the soil lay bare, dry, and cracked. Dionysus paused, sadness stirring in his heart. He pressed his palm against the earth and closed his eyes. He whispered gently, asking for life to return. Slowly, green shoots began to rise, small at first, then stronger. Vines curled upward, leaves spreading wide, until grapes formed heavy and full. The air filled with their scent, sweet and rich. Dionysus smiled. He did not take them for himself, but left them for those who might pass by. He walked on, but the field no longer lay empty. In time, his wandering brought him near villages of mortals. At first, he stayed hidden, watching from the trees. The people lived simple lives, their homes of stone and wood, their hands busy with work. He listened to their voices, their laughter, their worries. One evening, when the sun fell low, Dionysus stepped quietly into a clearing near such a village. The villagers gathered there, speaking of the poor harvest, a drought and tired soil. Dionysus felt their sorrow. His heart stirred the same way it had in the barren field. He walked forward, his garland of ivy glowing faintly in the firelight. The villagers gasped, drawing back, uncertain whether he was a spirit or a youth. Dionysus did not speak many words. He only lifted his staff, touching it gently to the ground. Before their eyes, vines unfurled across the clearing. Grapes burst forth, heavy and ripe, filling the air with their fragrance. The villagers stared in silence, then slowly reached for the fruit. When they tasted it, their faces lit with wonder. The wine that followed brought warmth to their hearts, easing their burdens. Dionysus watched quietly, a small smile on his lips. He did not stay long. When the villagers looked again, he was gone, already walking into the night. Far above, Hera felt the stir once more. Each act, each gift rippled through the fabric of the world. Mortals whispered his name without knowing it, calling him the youth of the vine, the bringer of joy. Hera's heart grew heavier. Still, she did not strike. She waited, silent, her gaze fixed upon the path he walked. The boy grew stronger with every step, his gift spreading further. And though she did not yet move against him, she began to weave her thoughts like threads of a net. Dionysus, unaware of her watching, continued his wandering. Each day brought new paths, new faces, new lessons. He was no longer only the child of the valley. He was becoming something greater, though he did not yet know what shape his life would take. The days passed softly, each one folding into the next. Dionysus walked from meadow to forest, from riverbank to hillside, his staff tapping gently against the ground. Wherever he went, life stirred. Vines curled behind him, blossoms opened in his wake, and the earth seemed to breathe more freely. Mortals began to whisper of a wandering youth crowned with ivy, whose presence left sweetness behind. Some spoke of him with wonder, others with caution. None knew his name, but all remembered the taste of his gift, the way it warmed the heart and loosened the weight of sorrow. High upon Olympus, Hera listened. The sound of mortal voices drifted like smoke to her throne. She knew the boy had left the safety of the hidden valley. He walked the open lands now, seen by many eyes, whispered of in many tongues. The time for silence had ended. Hera rose, her steps echoing across the marble floors. Her eyes burned with a cold light as she called for two spirits who often serve her will. They came quickly, shadows with faint shapes of wing and claw. Their eyes gleamed with hunger, their voices hissed like dry grass in the wind. "You will go to him," Hera said, her tone sharp as the edge of a blade. "You will bring madness to his mind. Confuse his steps, turn his joy into fear, and scatter his gift before it spreads too far." The spirits bowed, their forms rippling like smoke. "It shall be done." With a sweep of her hand, Hera sent them down, their dark wings slicing through the sky. Dionysus walked along the banks of a quiet river, the sound of water lapping at the stones. The sun rested low, gilding the surface with light. He bent to drink, cupping the cool water in his hands. It slid down his throat smoothly, filling him with calm. But when he lifted his gaze, the river no longer looked the same. Its ripples swirled in strange shapes, twisting into faces that grinned with sharp teeth. The air grew heavy, pressing against his chest. A whisper brushed his ear, though no one stood near. "You are alone. You are lost. None will keep you safe." Dionysus blinked hard, shaking his head. The whispers grew louder. From the corner of his eye, he saw shapes darting between the trees, thin, sharp, darting faster than shadows should move. His heart quickened. "Turn back," the voices hissed. "There is no path for you. You are nothing." His staff trembled in his hands. He pressed it against the earth, grounding himself, though the ground seemed to tilt beneath him. The river's sound turned harsh, like laughter mocking him. His breath came quickly, his thoughts tangled. He stumbled forward, deeper into the woods, the whispers trailing him. Branches clawed at his cloak, roots curled to trip his steps. The world tilted, spun, and shifted until he could not tell where he was. At last, he fell to his knees in a small clearing. His staff clattered beside him, and he pressed his palms to his ears, trying to block the voices. But they lived inside his head now, scratching at his mind. His heart pounded, his breath broke, and for the first time in his young life, fear swallowed him whole. High above, the spirits circled, their work nearly done. But something stirred. The earth beneath Dionysus seemed to sigh, a low hum rising from the soil. Tiny shoots of ivy crept across the ground, curling around his hands. They were cool against his skin, grounding him. Their touch carried no words, only steadiness, reminding him of the valley, of the nymphs, of all the gentle things that had shaped his steps. Dionysus closed his eyes. He breathed slowly, matching the rhythm of the earth beneath him. The whispers tried to claw louder, but their voices broke against the quiet strength that rose from within. He lifted his staff, and the vines wrapped around it, glowing faintly in the dim light. He stood, swaying but steadying, and turned his gaze to the trees. "I am not alone," he said softly. His voice shook at first, then grew firm. "The earth walks with me." The spirits shrieked, recoiling at his words. They darted through the shadows, their forms unraveling like smoke torn by wind. The whispers faded, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the steady song of the river returning. Silence fell, deep and clean. Dionysus stood in the clearing, his breath slowing. The fear that had gripped him loosened, though its echo lingered. He touched his chest, feeling his heart still racing. For the first time, he understood that the world was not only kind. Forces stronger than him could rise against his steps. He lifted his eyes to the sky, where clouds gathered faintly. "Someone watches me," he whispered. He did not speak Hera's name, for he did not yet know the shape of her anger. But he felt her presence, like a storm waiting beyond the horizon. The vines around his staff pulsed softly, as if to reassure him. He took a slow breath and began to walk again. His steps were heavier now, but not broken. He would not stop. That night, Dionysus rested beneath a great oak. The stars wheeled above him, calm and bright. Yet sleep did not come easily. When his eyes closed, he saw flashes of shadow and heard echoes of whispers. Still, the memory of the vine's touch steadied him, keeping the darkness from swallowing him whole. When dawn came, the world was quiet and fresh. The grass shone with dew, and birds sang as though nothing had passed. Dionysus rose, weary but determined. He had faced fear, and though it had shaken him, he had not fallen. Far above, Hera watched. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she saw the spirits return in failure. Their forms bent low before her, shivering under her gaze. "He resists," she said softly, her voice heavy with displeasure. "But he will not resist forever. He is still young, still unshaped. His path is long, and I will find a moment when his steps falter." The spirits bowed lower, their forms trembling. Hera turned away, her mind already weaving new plans. Below, Dionysus walked on, unaware of how closely her eyes followed him. The earth still stirred at his feet, the vines still answered his touch, but shadows now lay just beyond his path. And though he did not yet see them clearly, they would return. Dionysus walked slowly after the night of confusion. The memory of the shadows still pressed at the edges of his thoughts, though the morning light had washed much of the fear away. The grass bent gently beneath his feet, wet with dew, and each step carried him farther from the place where the whispers had sought to undo him. Yet though he moved on, his heart carried a heaviness he had not known before. He reached a meadow where tall flowers swayed, their colors pale in the early light. He lowered himself to the ground and let the petals brush against his hands. Their softness steadied him. He leaned back, listening to the quiet hum of bees drifting from bloom to bloom. The earth beneath him was firm and cool. Slowly, his breath matched its rhythm, and the tension in his chest eased. For a long time he remained still, watching the sky. Clouds drifted lazily, white against the blue. A lark rose into the air, its song clear and high. The world seemed gentle again, yet he knew now that gentleness could be broken. The thought unsettled him, but it also stirred something new. If shadows could creep into his mind, then he must learn how to strengthen it, just as vines strengthen by climbing stone. He spoke softly to the flowers around him. "I'm not afraid of walking, but I must learn to stand firm. Will you help me?" The wind brushed through the meadow as if answering. The petals quivered, scattering a faint fragrance. Dionysus closed his eyes and let it settle inside him, filling him with calm. In the days that followed, he wandered without hurry. He chose places where the land was quiet, where streams ran gently, and where trees spread their shade wide. At each place he paused, listening to the earth. He touched the soil, letting it run between his fingers. He pressed his hand against the trunks of trees, feeling their stillness. He drank from springs, letting the coolness cleanse his thoughts. The vines followed him, curling at his feet, wrapping gently around stones and climbing low branches. At night, when dreams threatened to bring back the voices, he let the vines cover him, their leaves resting over his cloak like a second skin. Their presence soothed him, and though sleep came slowly, it no longer frightened him. One evening, he came to a grove of olive trees. Their silvery leaves shimmered in the fading light. The ground was soft with fallen fruit, and the air smelled rich and heavy. Dionysus sat beneath one of the trees and leaned against its trunk. The stillness here felt deeper than in other places. It was as though the grove had stood for countless years, watching quietly as seasons changed. He whispered, "Teach me how to be steady like you." The tree did not answer with words, yet he felt its patience settle over him. He sat until the stars filled the sky, breathing slowly, his heart steadying with each moment. In the grove he dreamed. In his dream, the vines rose taller than he had ever seen, climbing the heavens. Their tendrils spread wide, carrying clusters of fruit that glowed faintly in the starlight. He reached for them, and when his fingers brushed the grapes, a warmth filled him, not the warmth of fire, but the warmth of wholeness. The whispers could not reach him there. He awoke with the dawn, the image still bright in his mind. The next day, Dionysus began to walk again, but his steps felt different. He no longer hurried. He paused often to breathe, to look, to listen. He spoke quietly to the rivers, thanking them for their water. He touched the leaves of trees as he passed, greeting them as companions. When fear stirred inside him, he closed his eyes and listened until it quieted. He learned that silence was stronger than noise, that stillness could steady what madness sought to break. As he traveled, he found villages once more. The people there remembered whispers of him, though they had not seen his face. They looked at him with wonder, noting the ivy that crowned his hair and the calm that followed in his steps. When they invited him to share their meals, he sat among them quietly. He did not boast, nor did he speak of what had frightened him. Instead, he listened to their stories, their laughter, their small worries. In their voices he found comfort, for their lives carried the same rhythm as the earth. Sometimes, when their food was little, Dionysus touched the ground gently, and vines rose, carrying grapes. The villagers tasted them and felt joy fill their gatherings. They thanked him, but he only smiled, for he knew the gift was not his alone. It belonged to the soil, to the sky, to the vines that had chosen to follow him. In one village, a child asked him, "Why do you carry vines with you?" Dionysus bent to the child's height and answered softly, "Because they remind me to grow upward, even when the ground tries to pull me down." The child laughed, not fully understanding, but carried the answer away like a secret treasure. Nights grew softer as the season turned. The stars spread brighter, the moon fuller. Dionysus learned to sleep without fear. He lay beneath branches that swayed gently, their shadows dancing across his face. The whispers did not return, though sometimes he felt their memory, like a faint echo far away. Each time it came, he pressed his palm to the earth and breathed slowly until the echo faded. He began to sing quietly at night. His songs were simple, made of sounds that matched the wind or the river. The earth seemed to listen, and sometimes in the pauses he thought he heard it hum back. The vines would sway with his voice, and the grapes they carried grew sweeter. In the quiet of these nights, Dionysus understood that healing did not mean forgetting fear. It meant carrying it gently, without letting it rule. He had been shaken, but he had not been broken. The earth had taught him how to root himself, how to draw strength from stillness. Hera, high upon Olympus, watched still. Her eyes narrowed as she saw the boy recover. The madness she had sent had not undone him. Instead, it had driven him deeper into the arms of the earth. Where she had meant to scatter him, he had found new steadiness. Her anger grew, but so too did her caution. She began to weave new thoughts, more subtle than before, waiting for the moment when his path stretched farther from the places that sheltered him. Unaware of her gaze, Dionysus rose each day with gentle strength. His journey had only begun, and though shadows lingered at the edge of his path, he walked with calm steps. The vines at his side stretched a little taller, their leaves brighter in the sun. He touched them softly, whispering thanks. The path of Dionysus stretched onward, winding through hills where tall grasses bent in the wind. The season was turning. Warm days lingered, yet nights grew cooler. The youth walked steadily, his staff touching the earth with each step, the vines still curling along beside him. He had learned to breathe with the land, to let silence settle within him, and the shadows of madness no longer frightened him. But far above, Hera had not forgotten. The queen of Olympus had watched his healing with sharp eyes. The madness she had sent had not broken him. It had only made him stronger. She understood now that force alone would not undo him. If his mind could not be shattered with fear, perhaps it could be tangled with gentler threads. Temptation, illusion, and false comfort might turn him from his path. She resolved to try again, weaving her plans with care. One afternoon, as Dionysus walked along a narrow track between two hills, the air around him shifted. The breeze grew sweeter, carrying the scent of fruit heavier than any he had known. His steps slowed. The smell was rich and warm, almost like honey, almost like wine, yet thicker, deeper. He lifted his head and saw, just beyond the bend, a grove he had never noticed before. The trees there were heavy with fruit, brighter and fuller than any orchard he had passed. The branches bent under their weight, the ground scattered with golden skins and crimson flesh. The air shimmered faintly, as if sunlight poured more brightly into that place. Dionysus felt his mouth grow dry, his heart quicken. He stepped into the grove. The ground was soft beneath his feet, the air thick with fragrance. He reached for one of the fruits, smooth and glowing in his hand. He lifted it to his lips, but before he could taste it, a voice spoke from among the trees. "Welcome, traveler." Dionysus lowered the fruit and turned. A woman stood there, tall and graceful, her hair falling like silk across her shoulders. Her gown shimmered with the same colors as the fruit, gold and crimson. Her eyes were warm, and her smile gentle. "Who are you?" Dionysus asked softly. "A friend," she said, stepping closer. "I tend this grove. Few wanderers find it, but those who do are welcome to rest, to eat, to forget their burdens." Her words were smooth, each one flowing like water. She gestured to the trees around them. "Take what you wish. Here you will know no hunger, no thirst, no sorrow. Stay as long as you desire, for the world beyond these hills is filled with struggle. Here there is only sweetness." Dionysus looked around. The grove shimmered as she spoke. The fruit seemed fuller, the leaves greener, the ground softer. His chest eased, and for a moment he felt the pull of her offer. He imagined resting here, free of wandering, free of whispers, free of shadows. He asked quietly, "Will the vines follow me here?" The woman's smile flickered for the briefest moment, though her voice remained smooth. "You will not need them. In this grove, all grows without effort. You may rest, and the world will care for itself." Dionysus glanced at the ground. His staff stood beside him, vines twining gently around it. They pulsed faintly, as if uneasy. He touched them with his fingertips, and the calm he had found in the olive grove returned. He turned back to the woman. "I hear sweetness in your words, but the earth has taught me that life is not only sweetness. The vine grows because it struggles upward. Without that struggle, the fruit has no strength." The woman's eyes hardened, though her smile remained. "Why chase hardship, child? Why wander when you could rest? Why carry burdens when they can be set aside? The world will not remember your steps. Stay here, and you will have peace forever." Dionysus looked into her eyes and saw a flicker of something sharp, something cold behind their warmth. He shook his head slowly. "Peace without roots is not true peace. It is forgetting, and I do not wish to forget." The vines around his staff coiled tighter, blowing softly. The grove wavered. The fruit dimmed, the leaves grew dull, and the ground lost its shimmer. The woman's form rippled like smoke in the wind. Her smile twisted into something thin and bitter before vanishing. The grove faded. When Dionysus looked around, he saw only a patch of bare earth, dotted with dry thistles and broken branches. The fragrance was gone, replaced with the sharp smell of dust. The fruit in his hand had vanished. He was alone once more. He stood quietly, steadying his breath. His heart still raced, but he felt no regret. He pressed his staff to the soil, whispering softly, "Thank you." The vines pulsed again, steady and alive. High on Olympus, Hera clenched her hands. Her trick had failed. The boy had seen through her illusion, choosing struggle over false comfort. His steps had not faltered. Her anger burned hotter, though she did not yet strike again. She began to shape darker plans, patient but relentless. Dionysus walked onward, the memory of the false grove fading behind him. He knew now that the dangers before him would not only roar with fear. Some would whisper gently, offering peace without truth. He carried this lesson quietly, knowing it was as important as any gift the earth had given him. As night fell, he lay beneath the stars once more. Their light spread across the sky, calm and steady. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly, his hand resting on the vines that curled at his side. Though shadows still lingered far above, the earth remained near, steady as always. And Dionysus continued, step by step, into the long road ahead. The days grew longer as Dionysus walked beyond the hills and meadows he had known. The sun rose in warm arcs across the sky, spreading light over forests, rivers, and fields. With each step, the youth felt the pulse of the earth beneath him, steady and patient, and the vines that followed his staff curled and twined as though greeting old friends. One morning, he reached a riverbank where the water widened into a shallow pool. The surface rippled faintly in the breeze, reflecting the sky's soft blue. Dionysus knelt to drink, letting the cool water slide over his hands and into his mouth. As he rose, he noticed a movement along the far edge of the river. A small group of travelers had paused, their eyes wide as they watched him. They were simple folk, carrying bundles of cloth and satchels tied with twine. Their clothes were faded from travel, their feet dusted with the earth, and they seemed weary from long days on the road. Yet despite their tiredness, their faces held curiosity and wonder. Dionysus smiled softly. He did not speak at once, only lifted a hand in greeting. The travelers hesitated, then stepped closer. Among them was a young girl, no more than 10 summers old, who reached out a tentative hand toward the vines curling at his staff. "What are these?" she asked softly. "They are friends," Dionysus replied gently. "They grow with me, and they remind me that the earth is never empty." The girl laughed quietly, a sound like water over smooth stones. "I have never seen anything like them." Dionysus reached down and allowed her small hand to brush the green leaves. They quivered under her touch, not violently, but with a gentle response, as if recognizing a new friend. The other travelers watched in awe. One of the older men murmured, "The youth carries life wherever he walks. Look how even the ground beneath his feet hums." Dionysus's heart lifted. He had wandered alone for so long that the sound of human voices, soft and kind, felt like a balm. He invited the travelers to rest near the river, and they settled, laying their bundles on the grass. As they rested, Dionysus noticed how dry their hands were, how their lips cracked from long travel. He touched the river with his staff, and the water shimmered faintly. It rose warmer, sweeter, carrying the taste of grapes and honey. The travelers drank and smiled, marveling at its flavor. Their laughter was quiet, steady, but filled the air like the soft rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. "You are a healer," the man said softly, "though we do not know your name." "I do not heal alone," Dionysus replied, "for the earth does most of the work. I can only help it speak." That afternoon, as they rested by the river, Dionysus began to show them the small wonders he could make. Vines stretched gently, wrapping around stones to form soft seats. Grapes appeared in clusters along the stems, ripe and heavy, and the travelers tasted them, marveling at their sweetness. The girl laughed and plucked a cluster to share with her companions. "You make joy grow," she said, her eyes bright. "Even in tired places, it blooms with you." Dionysus smiled, touched lightly by her words. He did not understand all of what he was yet, only that joy and life followed where he walked. As the sun dipped low, painting the river in gold, the travelers began to speak of their journeys. They were merchants, farmers, and a few wandering artisans, traveling to towns and villages far beyond. Dionysus listened quietly, learning the rhythms of the world beyond the valley. He understood now that the land was not only a place of growth, but also of movement, of stories, of people living and struggling in small ways that mattered deeply. The travelers asked if he would join them. Dionysus hesitated. He had walked alone for so long that companionship was unfamiliar. Yet the pull of shared steps, of voices mingling, of hands reaching toward the earth together, stirred something warm inside him. "I will walk with you for a time," he said softly, "but I must still follow the earth's call, wherever it leads." They accepted without question, grateful for the calm presence he brought. And so Dionysus began to walk among them, moving slower than they had ever traveled, pausing often to touch the soil, to feel the wind in the grass, or to bless the water of a spring. The travelers adjusted their pace, learning the rhythm of the youth who carried life with each step. By evening, Dionysus led them to a small clearing where the vines at his staff grew tallest and greenest. He touched the ground, and the vines curled around logs and stones, forming seats and small platforms. The travelers settled comfortably among them, and Dionysus produced grapes from the stems for their supper. They ate quietly, savoring the fruit, then shared stories of their homes. The youth listened, feeling a connection to each voice, each memory, each simple wish. He understood that the gift he carried was not only in the vines or the grapes, but in the calm and joy he could share through his presence. At night, Dionysus lay beneath the stars. The travelers had built a small fire. Its glow gentle and steady. He watched the constellations, tracing shapes with his eyes, and thought of the valley he had left behind, of the nymphs who had guided him, and of the river where he had first tasted his own power. The vines curled around him as he slept, a soft embrace that reminded him he was not alone. Though shadows of Hera still lingered far above, her schemes yet unseen, Dionysus felt a quiet certainty. The world was filled with companions, with people who could share steps and laughter, and with earth that could steady even the most wandering heart. When dawn broke, the travelers awoke to find the vines glistening with dew, clusters of grapes heavy and ripe. Dionysus moved among them, blessing the earth once more, touching the leaves and the stems. The travelers laughed quietly, careful not to startle him. "You make life bloom in places we thought were empty," the girl whispered, plucking a grape and sharing it with her companions. Dionysus smiled, looking toward the horizon. He knew the path ahead would grow more difficult, that Hera would not relent, that shadows and trials still waited. Yet he also knew now that he did not walk alone. The earth, the vines, and the companions who followed him would be part of his journey. And so he continued step by step among friends and fellow travelers, carrying the calm of the valley, the strength of the earth, and the quiet joy that would one day bloom across the lands. The morning sun spread across the hills as Dionysus and his small band of companions walked toward a village nestled between two gentle slopes. Smoke rose faintly from chimneys, carrying the scent of baking bread and warm earth. The villagers, seeing the travelers approaching, paused in their work. Children stopped chasing one another, their laughter softening into curious whispers. Dionysus walked slowly, the vines along his staff curling like a quiet greeting. He lowered his hand to touch the soil beside the path, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath his fingers. His companions followed him carefully, stepping lightly, knowing he measured every step with care and reverence. As they entered the village square, Dionysus noticed the weariness in the villagers' faces. The fields near the settlement were thin with crops, and some soil lay cracked and dry. A baker set down a tray of bread to rest, wiping his flour-covered hands on his apron. An elderly woman squinted at the travelers, her eyes softening when they settled on the youth crowned with ivy. The girl from the traveling party whispered, "They look tired. Perhaps they have not seen joy for many days." Dionysus nodded. "Then we shall bring it," he said softly, his voice carrying a calm certainty. He moved toward the village well, placing his staff gently against the stones. The vines at its base stirred, sending tendrils curling into the water. The liquid shimmered faintly, glowing golden under the sun's light. Dionysus cupped it in his hands, letting the villagers drink first. Their eyes widened in surprise, the cool water sweet with the taste of grapes and honey, refreshing their weary bodies. A small boy stepped forward, hesitant. Who are you?" he asked. "I am someone who walks with the earth," Dionysus replied gently. "I only help it share what it carries." The villagers murmured among themselves, watching as the vines moved, curling along stones and creeping over small walls. Dionysus's presence seemed to encourage growth. Flowers at the edges of the village bloomed suddenly, their petals bright and warm, spreading scent into the square. The villagers' faces softened. Some laughed quietly, others simply stared in wonder. The baker approached Dionysus, his hands trembling slightly. "We have had little to eat," he said softly. "Our ovens are warm, but our fields are empty. Can you help us?" Dionysus knelt and touched the soil near the edges of the fields. The earth pulsed beneath his fingers, softening and darkening. Tiny shoots rose almost instantly, breaking through the cracks and curling upward. The vines trailed behind his touch, spreading small clusters of grapes and tender green leaves. By the time he rose, the fields were alive with promise, the first hints of abundance stretching toward the sun. The villagers gasped. Some fell to their knees, touching the soil as if to confirm it was real. Others laughed with quiet relief, sharing the moment in silence. Dionysus smiled, allowing himself a gentle warmth at the sight. The joy that bloomed in their hearts reflected softly into his own. Throughout the day, he moved from one corner of the village to another. He touched fountains, and the water became sweeter. He rested hands on fruit trees, which bent under the weight of ripening fruit. He crouched to speak to small animals, and they no longer skittered away, but approached with gentle curiosity. The villagers followed quietly, learning to see the small, subtle miracles around them. At midday, he sat beneath a broad oak near the village center. His companions gathered around him, sharing the fruits that had grown under his touch. Dionysus looked at them, noticing the way their eyes shone with quiet wonder. Even the travelers who had walked with him for so long seemed to grow calmer in this village, their laughter blending with the soft sounds of nature he had nurtured. A woman approached him, her hands empty but her eyes hopeful. Your gifts, are they for us alone? She asked softly. They are for the earth, Dionysus said gently, and for all who walk with it. I can only help it speak. She smiled, understanding the meaning more in feeling than in words. She knelt beside him, tracing her fingers over the vines curling along the staff, and whispered thanks, though her voice was soft enough to carry only to him. As the day stretched toward evening, the villagers prepared a small gathering in honor of the youth who had brought life to their fields. They set out a simple meal on a cloth spread beneath the oak, leaving space for Dionysus and his companions. The smells of bread, fresh fruit, and roasted nuts mingled with the scent of the vines. Dionysus moved among them quietly, touching the fruits and plants, whispering gentle encouragement. He did not speak of fear or past shadows. He only let the earth and the gifts of the village blend, creating a quiet, gentle harmony. When night fell, lanterns were lit, casting a soft glow over the square. Children drifted close to him, their hands brushing against the ivy in his hair. He bent to their height, letting them feel the vines curl around their fingers. Their laughter was soft and musical, floating through the night air like the calm hum of a stream. Dionysus lay beneath the oak later, looking up at the stars. The vines around him glowed faintly, reflecting the light of the moon. His companions rested near him, their breathing slow and steady. The villagers had retreated to their homes, carrying the warmth of the day in their hearts. He understood something new. His gift was not only in the vines or the grapes, but in the calm that grew where he walked. Joy could be gentle and still, quiet enough to spread without noise. It could bloom in hearts tired by work or worry, in fields tired by drought, in villages weary from life's slow burdens. High above, Hera's eyes narrowed as she watched. The youth moved openly now, touching the lives of mortals and companions alike. Her anger deepened. The subtle trick she had tried before had failed, and now he grew stronger with each step, each gentle act of sharing. She began to weave new thoughts, more patient and cautious, planning a time when the boy would stretch farther, when his strength would be tested in ways not yet known. But Dionysus did not see her. He only felt the steady pulse of the earth, the soft weight of the vines, the warmth of human voices around him, and the quiet joy he could carry with each step. And so, beneath the stars and the soft glow of lanterns, the youth rested, knowing that tomorrow would bring new fields, new rivers, new villages, and new companions. The road stretched long and gentle before him, alive with possibility, and he would walk it with calm and patience, one step at a time. The morning air was soft with mist as Dionysus and his companions left the village behind. The travelers moved quietly, their steps careful on the dew-wet grass. The young girl skipped ahead occasionally, her laughter rising like the song of birds, and the other companions followed, settling into the gentle rhythm of walking with the youth. Dionysus lifted his staff to touch the soil at each step, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him. Each touch coaxed subtle life from the ground, tiny shoots of green that swayed as he passed, the first hints of flowers stretching toward the sunlight. Though he walked slowly, the land seemed to accelerate under his care, vibrant and alive, yet soft in its growth. As they moved farther from the village, they came to a hill overlooking a town. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the faint clatter of daily life reached their ears. Farmers carried baskets, women bent over gardens, and children played in the streets. Dionysus paused at the crest of the hill, gazing at the settlement. His heart stirred gently. He had wandered long enough to see that joy could bloom quietly, even in ordinary places. He wanted to share this calm with more than just a single village. The companions followed his gaze. The girl whispered, "Will they accept you as we did?" Dionysus smiled softly. "We shall see," he said, stepping forward. "The earth will guide them, as it has guided me." They descended the hill together, the grass brushing against their ankles. As they entered the town, the villagers noticed them immediately. Curiosity rippled through the streets. People paused in their work, eyes turning toward the youth crowned with ivy and the small entourage that followed him. A few murmured, pointing at the gentle sway of vines curling along his staff, their leaves glinting in the sunlight. Dionysus walked slowly among them, speaking quietly to the earth at his feet. Where he touched, small buds appeared along the edges of fields, blossoms stretched toward the sky, and vines twined along fences and walls. Children reached out, brushing their hands over the greenery. Adults stopped to watch, some skeptical, some enchanted. A farmer approached him cautiously, carrying a basket of half-ripe fruit. You make life grow?" he asked. "I help it speak," Dionysus replied gently. "The earth has much to offer, if we only listen." The farmer tilted his head, unsure but intrigued. Dionysus knelt, pressing his hands to the soil near the edge of the orchard. The earth seemed to hum beneath his palms. Tiny tendrils of green sprouted, curling around the fruit trees. The apples and pears swelled, the grapes glimmered faintly, and the air filled with a faint, sweet fragrance. The farmer's eyes widened. He touched the soil with reverent fingers, feeling the pulse beneath him. Others followed suit, kneeling to feel the earth and marvel at the subtle transformations. Laughter rose gently through the town, a soft, musical echo that seemed to rise from the soil itself. Dionysus continued through the streets, moving slowly, touching fountains and wells, blessing the water with the same subtle magic that coaxed life from the earth. Children followed him, skipping quietly, while adults paused in their chores, taking moments to watch and wonder. Even the animals seemed to sense his presence. Cats wound themselves around his feet, dogs lay near him with relaxed tails, and birds settled on branches above, their songs harmonizing with the calm that followed the youth. High above, Hera watched from Olympus. Her eyes narrowed as she saw how easily he drew attention, how the mortals responded to his touch. Her anger simmered, for each act of kindness and calm strengthened him, made him more resilient. She began to weave more subtle plots in her mind, considering ways to test his patience, his judgment, and his ability to resist temptation on a wider scale. For now, however, she remained unseen, biding her time while Dionysus spread joy quietly among mortals. By midday, Dionysus reached the town square. He rested beneath a broad tree, the sunlight dappled across his face. His companions gathered near him, and the townspeople slowly approached, their curiosity tempered by the calm presence he radiated. The girl from the traveling party offered grapes to the children, and Dionysus allowed them to taste, seeing their eyes light up with wonder. An elderly woman stepped forward. "You bring life where there is weariness," she said softly. "How can you carry such joy?" Dionysus tilted his head. "Joy is not mine alone," he said gently. "It grows from the earth, from kindness, and from small, careful steps. I can only help it bloom." She smiled, nodding slowly, and offered a small cup of water to the youth. He accepted it, the cool liquid sliding smoothly down his throat, refreshing and calm. Around him, the vines moved subtly, curling as if to acknowledge her gesture. The afternoon unfolded quietly, each moment soft and deliberate. Dionysus walked among the villagers, touching the edges of fields and fountains, offering grapes and small blessings. The town seemed lighter under his presence. Conversations rose softly, laughter filled the spaces between buildings, and a calm rhythm spread from the square into the streets and gardens. By evening, the townspeople had gathered beneath the tree where Dionysus rested. Lanterns were lit, glowing softly against the darkening sky. Children sat near him, their hands brushing the vines at his staff. Adults lingered nearby, some skeptical, some reverent, all quietly moved by the gentle life that had followed him into their midst. Dionysus watched the glow of the lanterns, the faces around him, and felt the quiet strength of his gift. He understood now that his path would carry him through many towns and villages, touching hearts and lands in subtle ways, preparing them to receive the joy that he nurtured. He also knew that with each act of sharing, he was learning patience, humility, and the careful balance between power and gentleness. As night deepened, he lay beneath the tree, vines curling around him protectively. His companions slept nearby, their breathing slow and steady. The stars stretched across the sky, calm and bright, and the moon cast a gentle silver light over the village. Dionysus felt a quiet certainty. His journey was only beginning, and the earth, the mortals, and his companions would walk with him, step by step, even as shadows stirred far above. High on Olympus, Hera's gaze remained fixed upon him. Each village he touched, each heart he calmed, made her schemes more intricate. She would need patience, cunning, and subtlety to challenge him now. But for the moment, Dionysus moved untroubled, his steps gentle and deliberate, spreading calm and joy across the land. And so, under the quiet glow of stars and lanterns, the youth rested, ready to continue his journey at dawn, carrying life, joy, and the subtle promise of vines curling toward the sky, reaching for the world that awaited him. The morning sun touched the hills in soft gold as Dionysus and his small traveling group left the town behind. The air was cool and fragrant with dew, carrying the scent of the earth and the distant forest. The youth walked with steady, deliberate steps, his staff tracing gentle patterns along the soil. The vines curled around it, alive with subtle motion, responding to his touch, almost like a living companion. As they moved along a winding path, a small group appeared in the distance. 3 figures approached cautiously, a young man carrying a bundle of tools, a woman with long dark hair and kind eyes, and a boy no older than the girl who had traveled with Dionysus since the riverbank. They watched him from a distance, curiosity and hesitation clear in their movements. The young man stepped forward first. "Are you the one they call the vine-crowned youth?" he asked softly. His voice carried awe and respect, though tinged with caution. Dionysus smiled gently, lowering his staff to touch the soil. "I am the only one who walks with the earth," he said. "And it is the earth that teaches me." The woman nodded slowly. "We have heard of your travels, the villages you visit. They speak of your gifts. We have seen the land bloom, even in places that seemed empty. We wish to walk with you." The boy remained quiet, his wide eyes reflecting both wonder and uncertainty. The girl from Dionysus's traveling party stepped forward, taking his hand gently, encouraging him. "You can come," she whispered. Dionysus considered them for a long moment. He had wandered for so long in quiet solitude that companionship was still unfamiliar. Yet he felt a gentle pull in his chest, a warmth that welcomed the possibility of shared steps and shared moments of calm. "If you follow, you must walk with care," he said softly. "The earth moves gently, and we must not disturb it." The newcomers nodded, understanding the quiet authority in his words. They fell in step behind him, cautious at first, then more comfortably as the rhythm of the journey settled over them. Dionysus walked slowly, touching soil, coaxing sprouts from hidden cracks, letting the vines respond to each step. The land beneath them seemed to breathe with their passage, and companions felt the pulse of the earth through their own feet. As the day unfolded, the youth taught them small lessons. He showed them how to move softly along the fields, how to listen to the whisper of leaves, how to let rivers flow without disturbing their calm. The young man carried tools to repair what the earth allowed, the woman spoke to plants as if greeting old friends, and the boy began to understand how to touch vines without frightening them. Each learning step was gentle, deliberate, and full of care. At midday, they reached a shaded grove. Dionysus rested beneath a broad oak, letting the sun filter through the leaves, creating patterns of light and shadow across the ground. The vines around his staff curled protectively, soft and alive. He gestured for the newcomers to rest, and they obeyed, settling on soft patches of grass. "You have grown," the young woman said quietly, looking at the vines. "I have never seen anything so alive." "They are friends," Dionysus replied softly. "They grow because I care, and because the earth allows it. We must learn to respect both, or neither will flourish." The girl who had been traveling with him since the riverbank smiled. "We are learning," she said, step by step. They ate a small meal together, sharing bread and fruit, some of which Dionysus had coaxed from the surrounding vines. The grapes were sweet, the leaves carried a gentle fragrance, and even the simplest morsels seemed richer in the calm presence of the youth. Conversations arose quietly, filled with wonder and reflection. No one rushed. No one demanded more than the moment allowed. As the sun began to set, Dionysus rose, walking slowly to the edge of the grove. He touched the vines curling along his staff, and they responded, stretching toward the soil, intertwining and reaching upward. He spoke softly, as if to himself, though his words carried to those nearby. "The earth grows with patience. So must we. The path is long, and it asks for care." The newcomers watched, absorbing his calm authority. They understood that to follow Dionysus was not to seek power or fame, but to walk with the earth and to witness the subtle joy he carried. Each of them felt a quiet shift within themselves, a gentle awakening of patience and wonder. That night, they set camp in the grove. The moon rose slowly, casting silver light across the grass. Dionysus lay beneath the oak, the vines curling softly around him, comforting and alive. His companions settled nearby, sleeping quietly, their breathing slow and steady, as if the calm he carried had wrapped around them like a warm cloak. The boy who had been hesitant during the day approached Dionysus. "Will we always walk with you?" he asked softly, his voice carrying both hope and uncertainty. Dionysus smiled gently. "If you wish, yes," he replied. "But you must always walk lightly, with care for the earth and for each other. This journey is not a race, and it asks nothing but patience and respect." The boy nodded, feeling a quiet reassurance settle in his chest. He curled beside the vines, letting their touch soothe him as sleep came. High above, Hera's gaze lingered on the group. Her anger deepened with each step he took, each heart he touched. The youth was no longer alone. He moved with companions who admired and learned from him, whose presence strengthened him in ways that could not be undone by whispers or illusions. Her plans would require more patience, more subtlety, and greater cunning than she had yet employed. But for now, Dionysus rested beneath the stars, his companions safe and calm around him. He understood, more fully than ever, the quiet power of gentle influence, the ability to grow joy, patience, and wonder in others without haste or force. Step by step, vine by vine, he was shaping not only the land, but the hearts of those who chose to follow him. The earth hummed softly beneath him. The vines curled upward, carrying the promise of tomorrow. The morning sun spilled gold across the rolling hills as Dionysus and his companions left the grove behind. The path stretched before them, winding through fields and forests, bending toward distant mountains whose peaks were softened by early mist. The air smelled faintly of earth and water, of blossoms yet to open, and the youth walked slowly, his staff tracing gentle patterns in the soil. The vines coiled around it, alive and attentive, responding to his steps as though carrying memory in their leaves. His companions followed closely, learning the rhythm of the journey. The girl who had traveled with him since the riverbank skipped ahead occasionally, her laughter light against the soft whisper of the wind. The boy who had recently joined the group trailed behind, absorbing each movement with careful attention, while the woman and young man walked steadily, observing the subtle signs Dionysus used to read the land. The farther they traveled, the more the landscape changed. The soft grass of the valleys gave way to rougher terrain. Stones crunched beneath their feet, streams ran clear but shallow, and the air carried a faint chill from higher altitudes. Dionysus touched the ground at intervals, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath his fingers, coaxing hidden life to stretch upward. Tiny shoots of green broke through cracks in the stone, small blossoms unfurled along the edges of streams, and the vines at his staff trembled softly, curling in response. As the group walked, they came upon a small village tucked into the foothills. Smoke rose lazily from chimneys, and the faint murmur of daily life carried on the wind. The villagers paused in their work, curious eyes watching the youth crowned with ivy and the companions trailing behind him. Children stopped their play, whispering to one another, while adults bent to observe the soft stir of the vines along his staff. Dionysus moved slowly into the village, kneeling to touch the soil beside a well. Water shimmered faintly under his fingertips, clear and cool, carrying the faint taste of grapes. Villagers approached cautiously, hesitant yet drawn to the calm presence he radiated. He offered the water first to a small boy who had wandered near, smiling gently as the child drank. The boy's eyes widened with quiet wonder, and a soft murmur spread among the others. The woman who had joined him spoke softly to the villagers. "He brings more than fruit or water," she said. "He brings life in small, gentle ways." Dionysus nodded, his hands moving over the earth, coaxing sprouts from hidden cracks and nudging vines to curl along fences and walls. The villagers watched as the land seemed to respond to him, small leaves unfurling, buds appearing along branches, and a faint fragrance of blossoms filling the air. The youth did not speak loudly. His calm presence was enough. Slowly, laughter and quiet chatter began to rise, blending with the soft sounds of the village. As the day wore on, Dionysus guided the companions through tasks that seemed ordinary but held subtle lessons. They repaired small fences and leaned vines along posts, learning to work with the land rather than against it. They tended to dry soil, letting it breathe and feel, allowing life to grow where it had struggled. The youth spoke only when necessary, his words gentle, guiding them toward awareness of the small miracles unfolding beneath their hands. By late afternoon, the group reached a hillside overlooking a river valley. The water wound like silver through the fields, dotted with villages and farmhouses. Dionysus paused, kneeling beside the grass, tracing the ground with his fingers. The vines at his staff stretched upward, curling softly, sensing the wider life around them. "Look at the land," he said quietly. "It moves even when we do not see it. We must learn to notice, to listen, to follow its rhythm." The companions nodded, feeling the truth of his words in the subtle sway of the grass, the murmur of the river, and the distant laughter of children playing along its banks. Even the boy, usually quiet, leaned forward to touch the vines and soil, absorbing the calm strength they carried. High above, Hera watched from Olympus. Her gaze narrowed as she saw the youth moving through the wider lands, his presence quietly altering the lives of mortals. Each village he touched, each companion who learned from him, strengthened him in ways her subtle interventions could not easily disrupt. Her plans would require patience and cunning, for the boy was learning resilience, patience, and the quiet power of influence without force. Even as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the valley, Dionysus guided his companions carefully down toward the river. He touched the water with his staff, and the vines along the riverbank stirred, curling along stones and roots. Fish leapt in the shallow pools, and the air carried the soft scent of wet earth and blossoms. His companions followed, moving with deliberate care, learning to touch and not disturb, to guide and not force. At night, they made camp beside the river under a canopy of trees. The stars began to stretch across the sky, soft and gentle, their silver light glinting on the leaves. Dionysus lay beneath the vines, their curling tendrils resting softly against him. The companions settled nearby, their breathing slow and even, feeling the calm that radiated from the youth. The girl from the riverbank whispered, "Do you think they will always follow us?" Dionysus smiled faintly. "Those who choose to walk with care will," he said, "but each must learn their own patience. We cannot carry anyone who does not wish to learn from the earth and from each other." He closed his eyes, listening to the gentle hum of the river, the rustle of leaves, and the distant calls of night birds. Each sound blended with the soft breathing of his companions, creating a quiet rhythm that carried into his own chest. The journey into the wider lands had only begun, yet he felt a gentle certainty. With each step, each touch of earth and vine, the path would unfold before them, patient and deliberate. And though Hera watched, weaving her subtle plans above, Dionysus knew that the lessons of patience, calm, and gentle guidance would shape him and his companions for the trials yet to come. Step by step, they would move forward, guided by the quiet pulse of the land and the soft promise of growth and life that waited in every touch, every vine, and every careful breath. The sun rose slowly over the distant mountains, casting a soft gold across the rolling valleys. Dionysus and his companions had spent the night beside the river, the air cool with early morning mist, and the soft murmur of flowing water accompanying their waking. The vines curled gently around his staff, shimmering faintly in the dawn light, a subtle reminder of the life that followed him wherever he walked. They prepared to continue, the companions moving quietly, adjusting their packs and checking their footing along the winding path. Dionysus touched the ground, feeling its pulse and encouraging hidden shoots to stretch toward the sun. Each step was deliberate, careful, as though the earth itself whispered guidance beneath his fingers. But high above, Hera's presence lingered in thought, unseen yet persistent. She did not confront him directly. Instead, she wove delicate disturbances into the world below, subtle challenges, minor confusions, and small temptations meant to test his patience and the focus of those who followed him. As the group ascended a narrow hill, the path became uneven, stones loose beneath their feet. The young man carrying tools stumbled, nearly dropping his bundle. Dionysus knelt quickly, pressing a hand to the soil and gently coaxing the earth to shift just enough to steady the loose stones. "Take care," he said softly, helping the young man regain balance. "The earth may seem uncertain, but it guides those who move gently with it." The woman paused beside a cluster of wildflowers, her eyes widening. "These are more beautiful than any I have seen," she whispered, bending to touch the petals. As she did, a sudden gust of wind scattered some of the blossoms across the path. A few of the companions flinched at the sudden movement. Dionysus closed his eyes briefly, breathing in the air. "Do not fear the wind," he said gently. "It tests us, yes, but it does not harm us. Move with it, not against it." He reached out, his fingers brushing the petals, and the vines along his staff stretched slightly, curling toward the scattered flowers, gathering them softly and returning them to their place. The companions watched in quiet awe, learning the rhythm of subtle influence and careful patience. As they continued, the terrain shifted again. A small stream crossed the path, its water clear but swifter than it appeared. The boy hesitated, unsure how to step across without slipping. Dionysus knelt beside him. "Feel the stones beneath your feet," he whispered. "Listen to the water. It flows, but it does not demand that we hurry. Step slowly, and it will carry your weight safely." Together they crossed, each companion moving with increasing confidence. The youth guided them not by force or commands, but by quiet example, by careful attention to the earth, the water, and the subtle cues that the world offered. By midday, the path led them to a sun-drenched meadow, its grass tall and dotted with wild berries. Dionysus paused, touching the soil and feeling the pulse beneath him. The vines along his staff twitched, sensing the disturbance in the wider world. Subtle yet present, Hera's influence was there. The berries were slightly overripe in places, their sweetness carrying a minor confusion, tempting the companions to eat without thought. The young woman hesitated, plucking a berry and examining it. "These smell delicious," she murmured. The boy reached for another. Dionysus knelt beside them. "Patience," he said softly. "The earth teaches in small steps. Taste only when it is ready to give its gift fully. Rushing leads to waste, not nourishment." He demonstrated carefully, touching a cluster of berries and letting them glow faintly in gentle sunlight, signaling readiness. The companions followed his example, learning to wait and to read the subtle signs of growth and timing. As they moved onward, the path led into a quiet forest. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp leaves and hidden blooms. Here, the disturbances were subtler still. Fallen branches lay just off the path, tempting the companions to stumble if they did not watch carefully. Shadows flickered in the corners of vision, teasing the mind, whispering doubt and fear. Dionysus walked calmly, his presence steady. "The forest watches, yes," he said, "but it does not threaten without cause. Listen and move with care." His companions mirrored him, learning to follow his rhythm, to breathe in harmony with the land, to trust in the subtle guidance offered by the earth beneath their feet and the vines along his staff. Evening approached, and the group reached a gentle hill overlooking a small valley. Here, Hera's test grew a little more pronounced. A patch of brambles lay across the path, their thorns sharp but spaced unevenly. The companions hesitated. Some considered forcing a path through, while others looked around, unsure how to proceed. Dionysus knelt, tracing the soil with his fingers, feeling the rhythm of growth and resistance. "Do not rush," he whispered. "The earth will open a way if we move with care." He touched the brambles, and the vines from his staff intertwined with the thorns, softening them and creating a narrow, gentle corridor for the companions to pass safely. Step by step, they followed, their trust in him growing with each careful movement. When they finally reached the crest of the hill, the sun was low, casting a warm orange glow over the valley below. The companions sat quietly, breathing in the air, feeling the calm settle in their chests. Even the boy, often hesitant, leaned back against the earth, a soft smile on his face. Dionysus touched the soil and whispered, "The trials we face are not meant to frighten or harm. They are lessons, subtle and small, teaching patience, care, and trust in the world around us." He looked at each companion, seeing understanding reflected in their eyes. They had learned not only to follow, but to move gently, deliberately, and with respect for the earth and for one another. High above, Hera's gaze lingered, frustration simmering beneath her calm exterior. The subtle trials she had set had not broken him or his companions. Instead, they had strengthened them, teaching resilience, patience, and quiet harmony. She began to plan more intricate challenges, knowing that each step forward would be met with care and deliberate response. Night fell soft and gentle as the companions settled beneath a grove of trees. Lanterns flickered softly, casting warm light across the ground. The vines curled protectively around Dionysus, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The youth lay beneath them, his hands resting lightly on the soil, feeling its pulse and the subtle energy of the world around him. The companions rested nearby, their breathing slow and even. Each had faced small challenges today, learned to move with care, and discovered the quiet joy of patience. Dionysus closed his eyes, listening to the soft murmur of the wind through the leaves, the distant call of night birds, and the steady pulse of life beneath their feet. Though Hera's presence lingered, unseen and patient, Dionysus felt no fear. The earth, the vines, and his companions provided a steady rhythm, a quiet assurance that even the subtlest trials could be met with care and gentle strength. Step by step, they would continue, guided not by fear or force, but by calm, observation, and the subtle wisdom of the land itself. The morning mist lay soft over the hills, wrapping the valleys in a quiet, silvery hush. Dionysus and his companions moved slowly along the winding path, the air cool with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. The vines along his staff curled gently with each step, alive and responsive, as if sensing the subtle excitement in the world around them. Since leaving the river and grove behind, news of Dionysus had begun to spread. Travelers carried tales of a youth who walked with the earth, who could coax life from soil and vine, who brought calm and joy wherever he moved. Today, that reputation would bring new faces to the path, strangers with cautious curiosity and hopeful hearts. As they approached a sunlit valley, the companions noticed movement on the distant hillside. Figures appeared, walking toward them with hesitation, carrying small bundles or simply traveling lightly. Children skipped ahead, tugging at the hands of adults, whispering in wonder at the sight of the youth crowned with ivy. Dionysus slowed, sensing the quiet excitement in the air. "They come willingly," he said softly, "but we must move with care, for the earth and hearts alike must not be hurried." The newcomers drew closer. Among them were farmers and artisans, mothers with children, and a few wandering youths whose curiosity had been ignited by the tales of blooming fields and gentle guidance. Each watched the youth from a respectful distance, hesitant but drawn by something they could not name. Dionysus knelt, touching the soil. The vines along his staff quivered, reaching slightly toward the newcomers, curling with subtle invitation rather than force. "You may follow," he said gently, "but walk softly and let the earth guide your steps." The villagers and travelers nodded, understanding the unspoken rule. They fell in step behind him, careful not to disturb the soil or the gentle rhythm of the journey. Dionysus moved slowly, touching stones, coaxing shoots from cracks, letting the vines respond and trail along paths naturally. The newcomers mirrored his movements, learning patience and quiet observation. At midday, they reached a gentle stream. Children hesitated at its edge, unsure how to cross the shallow but swift waters. Dionysus knelt, tracing the smooth stones with his fingers. "Step lightly," he whispered. "The water flows, but it does not demand we rush. Let it guide you, and it will carry your weight safely." One by one, the newcomers crossed, each learning to move with the calm rhythm of the youth. The boy who had joined Dionysus earlier watched them carefully, then took tentative steps alongside them, gaining confidence with each careful movement. The young girl skipped ahead, offering quiet encouragement, while the woman and young man walked steadily, helping those who stumbled or wavered. The valley opened into a sunlit meadow, dotted with wildflowers and small clusters of berries. The newcomers paused to marvel at the landscape, whispering softly to each other. Dionysus knelt among them, pressing a hand to the soil and letting the vines curl gently toward the ground. Tiny shoots rose from hidden cracks, petals unfurled in slow, deliberate growth, and the air filled with a faint, sweet fragrance. Everything is alive," one of the travelers murmured. "Even the soil seems to breathe beneath your hands." Dionysus smiled faintly. "The earth always moves," he said softly. "We only need to notice and walk with it step by step." They rested in the meadow for a time, sharing bread, fruit, and water. Dionysus allowed the newcomers to taste grapes coaxed from the vines, their sweetness spreading quiet delight among them. Children laughed softly, their voices carrying through the meadow like gentle music. Adults, too, felt the calm settle into their hearts, the quiet wonder of the earth's subtle gift. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the meadow, Dionysus rose, touching the vines along his staff. They stretched upward and outward, intertwining with nearby stems, creating a gentle corridor for the travelers to follow. "We move together," he said. "Care for one another, and care for the earth." "That is all we ask." The newcomers nodded, a quiet understanding settling among them. They had followed the tale, but now they were learning through presence, through careful observation, and through the gentle rhythm of walking with Dionysus. High above, Hera watched with increasing frustration. The youth was no longer a solitary wanderer. Each village, each meadow, each traveler touched by his presence added strength to his growing influence. Her subtle tests had not faltered him. They had only strengthened the calm authority he carried. She narrowed her eyes, plotting more intricate challenges, knowing that his growing following would soon demand even greater subtlety in her schemes. Night fell, soft and silver under a canopy of stars. The group settled in a quiet grove, the vines curling protectively around Dionysus. Lanterns glowed faintly, and companions, old and new, lay on the grass, breathing slowly, the calm of the journey settling into their chests. Dionysus touched the soil one last time before sleep, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him and the quiet strength of the growing group. "Tomorrow," he whispered softly, "we walk farther, not in haste, but in care. Every step matters. Every breath counts. Let the earth guide, and it will lead us gently." The newcomers drifted to sleep, their hearts quieted by the gentle rhythm of the youth and the soft promise of growth and wonder in the days to come. Dionysus closed his eyes, listening to the wind through the trees, the murmur of distant streams, and the subtle hum of life beneath the soil. Even as Hera's gaze lingered above, plotting the tests that lay ahead, Dionysus rested with a quiet certainty. Step by step, vine by vine, heart by heart, the journey continued. And each new follower carried a piece of that calm with them, weaving it into the world, spreading subtle joy and gentle wonder as they moved along the winding path into lands yet unknown. The morning light filtered softly through the trees, casting long golden patterns across the valley. Dionysus and his companions had spent the night in a quiet grove, the air filled with the scent of damp earth and subtle blossoms. The vines along his staff stirred gently, curling in anticipation of the day ahead, as though aware that the journey would bring them into places where joy could bloom in wider circles. The group set out slowly, following a winding path that led them to a larger village nestled along a gentle riverbank. Smoke rose lazily from chimneys, carrying the comforting scent of baking bread and roasting grains. Children played quietly along the banks, their laughter soft but melodic, while adults moved with the steady rhythm of labor and care. Dionysus paused at the village edge, his gaze sweeping over the familiar patterns of life. He noticed weariness in some faces, subtle hints of tension in the shoulders of the farmers, and quiet lines of worry around the mother's eyes. He knelt to touch the soil, letting the vines along his staff extend gently, brushing along stone walls and fence posts. Tiny shoots appeared where cracks had gone unnoticed, flowers unfurled softly in the sun, and a faint fragrance of sweetness spread through the air. His companions watched, their own steps careful, mirroring his movements, feeling the rhythm of the land beneath their feet. The girl from the riverbank skipped ahead to greet a few children, offering a gentle smile and small gestures of warmth. The young boy who had followed them for several days moved quietly, observing how each touch and careful action could coax not just life, but calm and trust. Word of Dionysus' approach had traveled faster than even he anticipated. Villagers gathered along the edges of the streets, some curious, some hesitant, all drawn by tales of a youth who could bring life and joy with subtle care. Dionysus spoke softly, his words barely above the murmur of wind and rustling leaves. "Let the earth guide your hands," he said. "Step lightly, and the world will respond with gentle gifts." By midday, the square had gathered a small crowd. Dionysus knelt among them, touching the soil and coaxing grapes and tender shoots from the earth. Children leaned forward eagerly, learning to press gently against the vines, while adults watched in quiet awe as the plants seemed to respond almost as if alive. The young woman who had joined him earlier took a basket of grapes and handed them out to the children. The young man helped the farmers align their small fences and plant tender shoots in prepared soil. Dionysus' calm presence guided every action. No one hurried, no one was forced. The rhythm of the day moved like a gentle stream, winding through the village, touching each heart with quiet attention. As the afternoon stretched on, Dionysus encouraged the villagers to gather beneath a large tree at the square's center. "We will celebrate together," he said softly, "not with noise or haste, but with shared joy and gentle attention." He gestured to the vines along his staff, which unfurled slowly, forming arcs and subtle patterns around the tree. The sunlight glinted through the leaves, casting soft, dancing shadows across the faces of those assembled. The companions moved quietly among the crowd, demonstrating how to handle the vines and touch the earth with care. The children laughed softly as they followed their movements, pressing gentle hands against the soil and feeling the subtle warmth of life beneath their fingers. Adults watched, then joined in, learning through quiet action how to coax life and joy from the land. Dionysus allowed the vines to climb subtly around posts and benches, creating a soft, living canopy that shaded the gathering. Small blossoms opened along the tendrils, filling the air with a delicate fragrance. A soft breeze stirred, carrying the gentle scent of earth, flowers, and fruit to every corner of the square. The villagers' laughter rose quietly, blending with the natural music of wind, rustling leaves, and the distant flow of the river. The youth offered a simple lesson in patience. Life unfolds slowly, he said softly, touching a small cluster of grapes. We cannot force it. We can only care for it, and it will grow in its own time. The villagers absorbed the wisdom without words, learning through presence and observation. Each touch of soil, each gentle step among the vines, became a quiet act of shared celebration. High above, Hera observed with growing unease. The youth was no longer alone. He moved among groups of mortals, guiding their hands, hearts, and minds with calm authority. Each act of gentle joy strengthened his influence, subtly weaving patience, care, and wonder into those who followed him. Her subtle interventions had failed to disrupt him so far, and she began to contemplate more intricate trials, aware that his growing presence could not be contained by simple obstacles. As evening approached, Dionysus encouraged the villagers to gather around the tree for a small meal. Bread, fruits, and roasted grains were shared, each morsel accompanied by quiet laughter and gentle conversation. The children sat close to the vines, letting the curling tendrils brush their fingers, while adults shared stories of their days, feeling a soft lightness in their hearts they had not known for weeks. The young boy who had followed Dionysus from the riverbank sat beside him, eyes wide with wonder. This feels like the earth is smiling," he whispered softly. Dionysus smiled, brushing a hand along the vines. "The earth gives what it can," he said. "We simply learn to notice, to care, and to step gently. Joy grows quietly when it is nurtured with patience." As night fell, lanterns were lit beneath the living canopy of vines. The soft glow illuminated the faces of companions, villagers, and travelers alike. The air was filled with a gentle hum of contentment, a calm symphony of breath, laughter, and the faint murmur of night insects. Dionysus lay beneath the vines, their curling tendrils resting softly across his shoulders and arms, and felt the pulse of life beneath him, steady and serene. The companions settled around him, their breathing slow and even. Even the newcomers, who had joined just days ago, felt the subtle rhythm of calm spreading through the grove. They learned, step by step, that joy could be shared without noise, that life could be coaxed without force, and that patience and care held their own quiet power. Hera's eyes lingered above, darkening with concern. The youth's influence was no longer confined to a single village or valley. It spread quietly, deliberately, into the hearts of many. Each shared meal, each gentle touch of the earth, each soft celebration strengthened his presence and deepened the bonds with his companions and followers. Her patience would need to endure, for each step forward only carried Dionysus' influence farther, weaving calm joy and subtle wonder into the lands below. And so, beneath the soft glow of lanterns and the protective embrace of vines, the youth and his companions rested, hearts calm, bodies warm, and spirits lifted. The path stretched onward, filled with possibilities, small joys, and gentle lessons yet to come. Step by step, vine by vine, and heart by heart, the journey continued. The first light of dawn brushed the mountaintops with soft gold, spilling down into valleys still thick with mist. Dionysus and his companions stirred quietly, stretching limbs stiff from the night's rest beneath the vines and trees. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying the faint scent of pine, wet earth, and hidden blossoms. The vines along his staff twitched gently, sensing the shift in the land as they prepared to leave the familiar paths behind. "Today, we move into the wilds," Dionysus said softly, his voice barely above the whisper of the morning breeze. "We will need care, patience, and attention to every step. The earth will guide us if we listen." The companions nodded, their eyes bright with quiet anticipation. The girl who had traveled with him since the riverbank skipped ahead, eager to lead small children safely through the forest. The young boy followed cautiously, his wide eyes absorbing every detail of the shifting terrain. The woman and young man, steady and deliberate, prepared packs and watched over the group, ready to intervene gently if necessary. The path led upward, narrowing as it wound through dense forest. The trees towered over them, their leaves rustling softly in the early wind. Shafts of sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating patterns of gold and green on the moss-covered ground. Small animals scurried quietly among the roots and underbrush, observing the travelers with careful curiosity. Dionysus moved deliberately, touching the soil and coaxing small shoots to grow, letting the vines stretch along stones and branches as markers of guidance for his companions. Soon, the forest became denser and the path more uneven. Rocks jutted from the earth, roots twisted across the trail, and fallen branches created subtle obstacles. Some of the companions stumbled, their steps uncertain, and the young boy hesitated, unsure how to follow without disturbing the fragile undergrowth. Dionysus knelt beside him, touching a stone with his staff and murmuring softly. "Feel the ground beneath your feet," he said. "Let it guide your way. Move with care, not haste. Every step matters." The boy nodded, leaning slightly as he tested the soil with his foot before proceeding. The young girl, ever lively, offered him a hand, guiding him gently, while the adults adjusted their pace to move in harmony with the land. Each careful movement allowed the vines to follow naturally, curling along roots and stones, creating a subtle trail of gentle guidance. By midday, they emerged from the forest into a high meadow, overlooking a valley below. The sunlight was warmer here, soft and golden, and a gentle wind carried the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass. The companions paused to rest, stretching tired limbs and drinking from small streams that trickled across the rocks. Dionysus knelt beside one such stream, touching the water and letting the vines extend along its banks. Tiny shoots of grass and delicate flowers rose, curling toward the light. "This valley," Dionysus said softly, "is full of quiet lessons. Watch, listen, and notice what it asks of us. The land is patient, but it will guide only those who move gently with it." The companions explored cautiously, picking up small lessons along the way. The young woman showed a group of children how to balance on uneven stones. The young man demonstrated how to clear debris without harming the hidden shoots, and the girl laughed softly as she helped the youngest travelers reach the berries that grew low to the ground. Dionysus guided them all with quiet words, each syllable deliberate, encouraging calm and attentive observation rather than hurried action. Even as they moved carefully, subtle challenges appeared. A sudden gust of wind swept through the meadow, bending the tall grass and rattling loose stones along the path. The boy froze, unsure how to continue. Dionysus knelt beside him again, holding out his hand. "Do not fear," he said softly. "The wind does not push us. It teaches us to move with it." The boy took a deep breath and followed his hand, stepping lightly through the swaying grass. The forest's edge approached once more, leading into a narrow canyon carved by a small river. The path became steeper, with loose stones and uneven soil. Dionysus paused, touching the ground and letting the vines extend along the canyon walls, curling around rocks to mark safe footing. The companions followed carefully, their trust in him growing with each deliberate step. High above, unseen and watchful, Hera observed the group. Her plans had grown more intricate, subtle threads woven into the land itself. Yet despite her careful manipulations, the youth's calm presence and gentle guidance carried the companions safely through the challenges. Each obstacle they overcame without panic, each subtle lesson learned, made her patience thinner and her plots more urgent. By evening, they reached a small plateau, a natural resting place atop the canyon's edge. The sun dipped low, casting warm orange and pink light across the valley below. Dionysus knelt to touch the soil, feeling its pulse and the steady rhythm of life that had guided them through the day. The vines curled around him protectively, soft and alive, and companions settled nearby, their breathing slow and even. "Today, you have learned the rhythm of the wild," Dionysus said softly. "The land does not demand haste. It asks only that we notice, care, and move gently. Patience and observation are as strong as any force." The companions nodded, feeling the quiet certainty of his words. Even the boy, who had hesitated so often, smiled softly, understanding that careful attention could carry them safely through unknown terrain. The young girl leaned against him, her small fingers brushing a curling vine, absorbing the calm strength it radiated. Night fell, gentle and soft, blanketing the plateau in silver moonlight. The wind rustled the trees and the vines, a quiet lullaby that wrapped around the companions. Dionysus lay beneath the curling vines, listening to the murmurs of the forest, the distant river, and the subtle hum of life beneath the soil. The companions gathered close, drifted into restful sleep, hearts quiet and spirits calm. Even as Hera's gaze lingered, a frustration grew. Dionysus moved into the wilds with patience, careful attention, and gentle influence, teaching his companions to follow his rhythm and respect the earth. Her subtle interventions had not disrupted their journey. Instead, each challenge had strengthened the bond between the youth and those who traveled with him. And so, beneath the protective embrace of vines and the silver glow of the moon, Dionysus and his companions rested, ready to meet the next day's journey into untamed lands, where each step, each breath, and each careful touch would continue to teach patience, harmony, and the quiet joy that followed them wherever they moved. The dawn arrived quietly, soft gold spilling over the hills and valleys, painting the leaves of the forest with warm light. Dionysus and his companions had spent the night near a quiet village, resting beneath trees whose branches swayed gently in the morning breeze. The vines along his staff curled slowly, alive and attentive, sensing subtle changes in the air. Something was shifting, an unease that the youth could feel before it was seen. The villagers were already stirring. Children ran lightly to fetch water, their laughter a soft melody in the still morning. Adults moved about with practiced calm, tending to chores while noticing the presence of Dionysus and his companions. The youth knelt beside the soil at the village's edge, tracing gentle patterns with his fingers. Tiny shoots rose where cracks had gone unnoticed. Leaves stretched toward the sun, and a faint fragrance of grapes and wildflowers filled the air. "This land is calm," Dionysus murmured softly to his companions. "But some disturbances lie ahead. We must move carefully, observing not only the earth, but the hearts around us." The companions nodded, stepping lightly behind him. The young girl skipped ahead to greet children, offering soft words and gentle guidance. The boy followed, hesitant at first, then with increasing confidence, touching vines and stones with quiet care. The woman and young man prepared small baskets, helping villagers move with awareness and patience. By midday, the square at the heart of the village had gathered a larger group. Word of Dionysus' approach had traveled quickly, and travelers from nearby settlements arrived, curious about the youth who moved with the earth. Dionysus welcomed them quietly, kneeling to touch soil and coaxing vines to spread softly along benches, posts, and walls. Small clusters of blossoms opened where none had bloomed before, the gentle fragrance drifting through the crowd. Yet as the group grew, so did a subtle tension. Hera's presence reached down like a shadow, unseen but felt. Small quarrels arose among villagers, whispers of impatience or disagreement. Children tugged at each other, adults questioned the best way to help, and faint murmurs threatened to disrupt the calm rhythm Dionysus had established. Dionysus observed quietly, his hands still on the soil. The vines along his staff quivered gently, sensing the unease. He spoke softly, barely above a whisper, yet every word carried a quiet authority. "Do not fear small disturbances," he said. "They are reminders that patience matters. Step gently, observe, and care for one another as you care for the earth." The young woman moved among the villagers, showing them how to lift baskets without strain, how to tend to plants without rushing, and how to guide children with quiet attention. The young man assisted in repairing a small fence near the square, demonstrating careful alignment and gentle handling of tools. The children followed the young girl's lead, laughing softly as they pressed their hands into the soil, learning that their touch could nurture rather than disturb. Hera's influence manifested in subtler ways now. A sudden gust of wind that knocked over a basket, a patch of soil that seemed unusually dry, or the faint scent of bitterness in some of the grapes. These small disturbances tested the patience of the newcomers and villagers alike. Some faltered, stepping hastily or raising voices in minor frustration. Dionysus knelt calmly, pressing a hand to the earth and murmuring softly. The vines responded, curling around the dry soil and broken baskets, guiding them back into order without harsh correction. "The land and each other are patient teachers," he said gently. "We must only listen and move with care." One woman, frustrated by the scattered grapes and unsettled soil, raised her voice slightly. Why does it not all happen smoothly? We try to help, yet the work seems harder now. Dionysus rose slowly, the vines trailing softly behind him. His eyes met hers with calm understanding. Because life moves in gentle rhythms, he said softly. When we try to rush, we miss its lessons. Observe, breathe, and allow the earth and your hearts to guide each step. The villagers fell silent, their voices softening. They followed his example, moving deliberately, adjusting their actions with patience. The children laughed again, softly this time, as if sensing the calm returning to the square. Even the hesitant newcomers followed, stepping lightly, trusting the rhythm Dionysus had established. By late afternoon, the disturbances had softened. The small conflicts dissolved, replaced by quiet cooperation and shared attention. The vines curled protectively around benches, posts, and the edges of the square, forming a subtle framework that guided movement naturally. Blossoms opened, the gentle fragrance of grapes and wildflowers filling the air once more. Hera observed from afar, her frustration mounting. Her subtle tests had stirred momentary chaos, yet the youth's calm and patient guidance had restored balance. Each act of gentle correction, each quiet word, strengthened not only the companion's trust, but also the villager's ability to follow without fear or coercion. Her shadows could not penetrate the slow, deliberate rhythm he cultivated. As evening fell, the group settled beneath a large oak at the square's center. Lanterns glowed softly, illuminating the vines and the quiet faces of companions and villagers alike. The air was warm and fragrant, carrying the gentle murmur of leaves, distant streams, and the soft laughter of children. The young boy approached Dionysus, whispering, "Did she cause the trouble today?" Dionysus smiled faintly, touching the vines curling at his staff. "Perhaps," he said softly, "but even when shadows appear, the earth and hearts can guide us back to calm. Patience, care, and gentle attention are stronger than any disturbance." The girl from the riverbank leaned against him, her small fingers brushing the curling tendrils. "Even with trouble, the day was beautiful," she whispered. Dionysus nodded, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him and the steady calm of his companions. "Yes," he murmured. "Every moment carries lessons. Even in disturbance, we find growth, and even in shadows, we find light." Night fell quietly over the village, silver and soft. The companions rested close, the vines curling protectively around them. Dionysus lay beneath the oak, listening to the subtle rhythms of the earth, the gentle hum of life, and the quiet breathing of those around him. Despite Hera's shadow lingering nearby, he felt a deep certainty. Patience, calm, and gentle guidance could preserve harmony even in the face of challenge. The first light of dawn spilled gently across the hills, soft gold brushing the valleys and illuminating the vines that curled along Dionysus' staff. The youth rose slowly, stretching beneath the protective embrace of the morning breeze. His companions stirred quietly, their breathing even and calm, the rhythm of rest lingering in their bodies. The journey had carried them through forests, meadows, mountains, and villages. Each step had been a lesson in patience, gentle guidance, and quiet influence. Every obstacle, Hera's subtle disturbances, uneven paths, uncertain companions, had been met with calm attention, careful observation, and a gentle touch. Now, as the sun warmed the earth, the youth surveyed the valley ahead. Travelers from distant villages moved toward them, drawn by stories carried on the wind. News of Dionysus' calm presence, his gentle teaching, and the small wonders he had nurtured had spread far and wide. Children laughed, adults walked with curiosity and anticipation, and even the most wary faces held soft smiles, reflecting the subtle joy he brought. Dionysus knelt to touch the soil, his hands tracing gentle patterns in the earth. The vines along his staff stretched outward, curling over stones and posts, weaving a quiet path for those who followed. Tiny shoots of green rose where cracks had once been barren, blossoms unfurled along edges of streams and walls, and a faint fragrance of grapes and wildflowers filled the air. "Step gently," he whispered to the growing crowd, "and let the earth guide you. Patience and care are stronger than haste and force." The companions moved among the newcomers, demonstrating careful handling of soil, plants, and tools. Children leaned close, pressing gentle fingers into the earth, while adults observed the rhythm of work and rest, learning that every action, even the smallest, could carry quiet influence. The young girl offered laughter and encouragement. The boy followed with quiet curiosity, and the woman and young man ensured that all movements were gentle and deliberate. By midday, the square at the valley's center was alive with activity, yet not with chaos. Every movement was deliberate, every smile soft and genuine, every step careful. The vines curled around benches, posts, and trees, forming subtle arcs that guided the rhythm of the gathering. Small clusters of fruit appeared where none had been, blossoms opened with soft fragrance, and the sunlight danced gently across the scene. Even Hera's subtle disruptions could not break the calm. Gusts of wind, uneven soil, or startled animals came and went, but the youth's presence and guidance remained steady. Each interruption became an opportunity for learning, a gentle lesson in patience and observation. The villagers, companions, and travelers alike moved with quiet awareness, following his example with growing confidence. Dionysus knelt once more, touching the soil. "The earth, like our hearts, responds to care and attention," he murmured. "Even when shadows approach, we can move with calm, patience, and trust. Every step, every touch carries its own quiet power." The villagers, now fully engaged in the rhythm of the moment, smiled softly, their hearts lightened. Children ran in small circles, laughter blending with the hum of the earth and the gentle whisper of leaves. Adults worked together, planting, repairing, and tending to the small wonders around them, discovering the quiet joy of cooperation and gentle influence. As the day moved toward evening, Dionysus guided the gathering to a hill overlooking the valley. The sunlight softened to gold and pink, painting the landscape with gentle warmth. Lanterns were lit among the vines, their glow faint but steady, illuminating the faces of companions, villagers, and travelers alike. The youth lay beneath the vines, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him. His companions settled close, leaning against each other or brushing their fingers over curling tendrils. The children rested nearby, their small faces peaceful and content. Even the adults, once uncertain or wary, now shared in the quiet calm that had settled over the valley. "Today you have learned," Dionysus whispered softly, "that patience, gentle guidance, and calm attention can transform the world. The earth responds to care, and hearts respond to kindness. Step by step, vine by vine, and heart by heart, we can bring quiet joy wherever we move." The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving a sky brushed with soft pink and silver. Stars appeared slowly, glimmering gently above the valley. The vines curled around Dionysus protectively, and a faint, sweet fragrance filled the night air. The companions, villagers, and travelers drifted into quiet rest, breathing in harmony with the earth, the stars, and the subtle hum of life around them. Hera's shadow lingered, distant but unbroken, yet even her unseen presence could not disturb the calm that had taken root. The youth's influence had spread through patience, careful guidance, and gentle attention, reaching hearts and minds in ways that force could never achieve. Her trials, subtle or intricate, could not undo the bonds that had formed through trust and quiet wonder. The night settled over the valley, soft and serene. Dionysus lay beneath the vines, closing his eyes and listening to the gentle murmur of leaves, the distant flow of streams, and the calm breathing of those around him. He felt the pulse of the earth beneath, steady and strong, and the quiet satisfaction of a journey that had reached a gentle triumph. Step by step, vine by vine, and heart by heart, Dionysus had brought calm, joy, and subtle wonder to the lands he traversed. His companions rested near him, each carrying the lessons of patience, observation, and gentle influence into their own hearts. The villages he touched would remember not just the youth who walked with the earth, but the quiet rhythm of care, trust, and calm that he shared. And so, beneath the silver glow of stars, the protective embrace of vines, and the gentle hush of the night, Dionysus and his companions rested, the journey complete, yet always continuing in the hearts and minds of those they had touched. Calm, gentle, and full of quiet wonder, the world carried the subtle legacy of a youth who moved with the earth, teaching that true strength lies not in force, but in patience, care, and quiet guidance. The valley slept peaceful and alive, carrying the soft promise of growth, harmony, and gentle joy into every corner of the lands Dionysus had walked. And in that quiet, eternal rhythm, the story of the god of wine reached its gentle, restful close.